In this episode, I speak with Samantha Bullock from the Alchemist Tree in Eastern Australia. We talk about her path as a nurse working with children with cancer, to then working with flower essences and essential oils and as a naturopathic doctor. We cover everything from rituals to protect yourself as an empath, to the wildlife and what it's like to live in the bush in Australia, to her practice working with women and men going through IVF. Welcome to the Flower Lounge, a place for conversations with wildly creative people and a little plant-loving wisdom to help you experience life in full bloom. I'm Katie Hess, flower alchemist and founder of LOTUSWEI, and I believe in a world where we're all living at our personal edge. Welcome to the Flowerlounge Podcast. I am very honored to be sitting next to, in person, a guest who came all the way from Australia. I'm sitting with Sam Bullock, who's a naturopathic practitioner, and she's been in practice for 30 years, specializing in women's health and emotional well-being. Flower essences and essential oils are her passion, and she considers her garden and kitchen her church. She lives in the bush in Australia with a wild menagerie of animals and her beehive. She teaches women how to recover their sovereignty, power, and well-being. Thanks for being here, Sam.
You're so welcome. I'm so happy to be here. So excited. I can barely stand it.
So where do we start? I mean, why don't we do your card first?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's have you just
do my card?
Yeah.
It's, I've chosen today Pink Spirea, which is all about activating laughter and allowing your inner child to play. Beautiful. I love that. It's a beautiful flower. Thank you.
Okay, we'll come back to that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's very rare that I sit next to somebody who is another flower essence practitioner and for so many years and with so much experience under your belt. It's such a treat. So maybe just share a little with the listeners about how you came to flower essences and how that's been like a core anchor in your practice.
So I began my work as a health practitioner in nursing, and I graduated from my nursing school and got on a plane after my last exam, flew from Western Australia to Sydney and began my first nursing job the next day. And I was allocated to the pediatric oncology ward. So that is caring for children who are working through a cancer journey. And it was a little bit of a deep end to be dropped into as a new graduate. And I remember the feeling in my body after about 2 weeks of being on the ward of feeling like I was seriously out of my depth at a spiritual and emotional level, because what I was working with these families was in some ways so extreme and so expanded. There is something particularly poignant and intense about caring for children who are dying or who are critically ill. There's a lot of shock and trauma in the space. There's a lot of grief in the space. There's a lot of survival terror. There's a lot of high-level intense emotion. And as a nurse practitioner, as a registered nurse, we had very baseline psychological support skills, but nothing that felt like it addressed what I was dealing with professionally. And I knew out of my own kind of inner knowing and wisdom that I didn't want to go down the path of partying, drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, taking recreational drugs, doing some of the kind of addictive fixing and self-medicating behaviours that I observed in that kind of community. I knew that that would be a really deep path of destruction for me. I just had that really deep knowing, and there wasn't really anything else. Personal growth and development was really in its infancy. I didn't consider myself mentally ill, so I didn't really think that I needed psychological care or psychiatry care. And there was this massive gap, and I used to walk to work each day whenever I could, and there was a tiny little shop called Essential Energies on Gleepoint Road, and it sold crystals and indoor plants and flower essences and essential oils. And I didn't even know what they were at that point. And there was just something incredibly beautiful about the aesthetic of the shop. And it always was like a bit of a magnet for me. So I would go in there as often as I possibly could, and I befriended the owner. And he was sort of in his, I guess at that point, his 50s, and he took me under his wing and he started teaching me about essential oils and about aromatherapy, and I began using it for myself. And I was simultaneously enrolled in the first year of my naturopathic degree at that point. So I was double streaming nursing and studying. And so I began to use flower essences for my own emotional well-being to address whatever was getting triggered in me on a day-to-day basis. And I began formulating what I call aromatic body veils. So I would mix essential oils with carrier oils, and I would literally wear them as instead of body moisturizer. And so I was using them as an energetic shield. And I began carrying like little vials of flower essences and rescue remedy and essential oils in my pockets. And I would start very subtly and discreetly using them at work with the children that I cared for. And that was my gateway in. And then because they were so incredibly effective at supporting me emotionally and spiritually, to have overview, to receive the insight and the intuition that I needed to do my work, and to be able to process and integrate the emotional charge that was flowing through my body in response to caring for children and their parents. They just became part of everyday life. And then several years later, when I had my own daughter, they became part of everyday life in our home. And then when I opened up my practice, they were the foundational modality on which my clinical protocols were built. So they feel like my allies, my very best friends in the world. They're like at a plant level, they're my soul family. I love working with them. I feel so grateful to James for introducing me to them and for all of the immeasurable gifts that they've brought to my life, to my family life, to my professional life for this, this period of time as a practitioner. Yeah, I just adore them.
So going back to that time in your life, if you were going to resource from that particular time, if we have any listeners who are, say, emergency workers or nurses or working with people with really intense emotions and they're very empathic, what sort of rituals would you recommend to them as either protective or, like you were talking about before, using your own body as a vehicle to transmit something lovely and inspiring and powerful to who you're working with?
So I would always be thinking about the essential oils that come from the resins, from trees, from the mint family of herbs, so lavenders, and all of those essential oils are fundamentally grounding, centering, calming, relaxing, nourishing. And if you think about anything that comes from a tree, whether it's a flower essence or an essential oil, trees embody stability in the face of storm. They withstand all extremes of weather, all extremes of climate, and they stay deeply grounded and centered in the earth, able to fully express their gifts and talents and abilities through their flowers, through their leaves, through their fragrance, through the medicine or food that they provide. So I always think about trees. So I would think about frankincense. I would think about cedarwood. I would think about vetiver. And I would look at just being really simple, making up aromatic body veils, which are small dilutions of essential oils in a beautiful carrier oil, and you apply it to your body every day like moisturizer. And it should smell beautiful to you. You should feel happy and expanded and light and joyful when you put it on. It should be something that's deeply pleasurable for you, because it's going to actually center you into your heart chakra, into your center, into your womb space, and have you walking forward into the world from a place of power and grace and poise. And then, you know, I used to carry lavender, frankincense, wild orange or sweet orange oil, and rose geranium, because lavender is deeply calming. Wild orange is an anxiolytic. It releases fear and stress, but it's also uplifting. Geranium is really deeply nurturing. It's like a warm hug. It creates a sense of safety and trust. So I would actually put those on my body over my chest anytime that I had to hold a child who was going through a traumatic or painful diagnostic procedure, and they would just inhale the scent and the fragrance of those oils by default, and it would help them to relax and be calm. And I used a lot of other kind of techniques to support them, but it just allows you to be more empowered, to feel more equipped to process. And then having those oils available, the grounding, centering oils, can really have people come out of a panic state, out of a fear state, out of an emotional distress state. So you're actually really supporting somebody at a deeper level to come back into a place of calm. And, you know, Rescue Remedy or any of the emergency essences that are from the flower essences realm, you know, there are multiple emergency elixirs that come to mind. Mm-hmm. So it's just a matter of choosing the ranges that resonate. And, you know, the reason that I use LOTUSWEI in my practice is because they're such exquisitely high vibration, beautifully formulated elixirs and mists, and they're potent. They really work. And so, you know, they're my choice space, you know. So yeah, I would be having magnesium baths as soon as you get home. I would be having some kind of, also I feel like, to have some kind of spiritual practice that provides overview, perspective, viewpoint, purpose and meaning for the work that you do in the world, so that you're not getting stuck in the 3D reality of it, that you actually have a higher reason for doing your work, and that you're deeply connected to that each day. And then self-care, making sure you eat beautiful, clean food, you get adequate sleep, you're taking care of your body and nurturing it with magnesium and salt and cleansing. If you have access to the forest bathing, if you have access to the ocean, getting into the ocean, being in nature as often as you possibly can, because nature is fundamentally healing. Mm-hmm. And that's a way of being in partnership with the natural world. That's part of its gift, is to be able to support us as humans in our journey and our process.
I love what you said about aromatic body veils. It's such like sexy language.
I know, I love it, right?
It makes me like go back to the stuff that we have and be like, why don't I do that every day? I mean, you know, we're so used to like anointing and using the elixirs and misting, but to allow myself the luxury, and I even have a company, so it's not like I don't have access.
You don't have access to it,
but to allow myself to say, like, take Game Changer and just like slather it all over my body before I start the day, as a practice, a ritual, a self-care, and a protection, and a catalyst, is like, wow, it's so divine.
For me, it's a still point. Like my daily rhythm is wake up, meditate, sometimes I'm able to get out into my garden, but meditation and prayer is like the fulcrum of my morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I will either then get up, shower, dress, and get into my day, or I'll go out into my garden as much as I possibly can and spend some time there. But then at some point in the showering ritual of my day, aromatic body veils are my thing. So I don't necessarily use a lot. It's, a small palmful that I rub into my palms, and then I'm literally patting it onto my body, and I'm actually like connecting with my skin, connecting with my body, grounding myself. I know it's a really trendy word right now, but it's a self-love practice. It's a self-pleasuring practice of just being present and grateful for the fact that I have a body, that for all of its quirks, and, I'm full on in my middle 50s of the whole postmenopausal, like aging is starting to slightly come into my consciousness. I'm aware of shifts in my body, and it's just about really nurturing that and just taking that 5 minutes to just be present, to come into my body, come into my heart, and just sort of set my intention for the day. So I'm very deliberate at the serums or the elixirs, or my favorite is Infinite Love. I just adore the smell of it. I would put it in an IV if I could. It's just so delicious. So that's my favorite anointing oil for the day. So I just mix it and put it on, and I just smell like a garden all day.
So you don't have to come out like a greasy chicken. You can just like pat.
Yeah. So it doesn't sit on your skin like a massage oil. It soaks all the way in.
I love that. And speaking of being in nature, you live in the bush. Can you share with us, what is it like to live in the bush? Because I know your animals are quite different than the animals that we experience over here in the Northern Hemisphere.
I feel like I am the luckiest woman in the world to live where I do. It's subtropical bush, so a lot of eucalyptus trees, plus some subtropical trees and foliage. We have a couple of acres, and our home and our garden are on a quarter of an acre. And I'm in the process of converting that garden into biodynamics. And I practice organic gardening, and then the rest of the land is set aside as koala habitat. And so about every 6 to 8 weeks, we have a family of koalas that move into our bush and spend about a week, and we hear them calling at night and mating at night because they're nocturnal animals. And if I get my binoculars out, I can sometimes see them, but they're pretty secretive. They like to hide. So, I diarise that, and I know now after living in this home that they come every 6 to 8 weeks as a rhythm. And then I have kookaburras and magpies and butcherbirds and currawongs and crows and all sorts of cockatoos and parrots and lorikeets that come, the rainbow lorikeets. Australian native birds are often beautifully coloured. And so I wake to the sound of birdsong every day. And when I don't experience that, I actually get a bit stressed. Like being here in Phoenix has been really interesting. I'm very present to the fact that there's no birdsong. I can't hear them. And I really miss that. There's something for me about waking up. My bedroom faces out onto our garden and onto the bush. So we're about a 40-minute drive away from Springbrook National Park, which is mountainous, subtropical rainforest, and I can see the mountains from my house. So I have this really deep connection to that whole volcanic caldera, tropical rainforest, mountains and hills. It's very beautiful. It's very lush. It rains a lot. So I feel deeply grounded into the natural world. And we have wallabies. I've got my partner, James, just sent me photographs of the wallabies are back and they've got their joeys in their pouches. So we've got tiny little babies. They love to come and feed at about 4:30 in the afternoon, and they eat all of my lemon balm, all of my peppermint, and I'm totally happy about that. We have a bush turkey called Jeffrey who enjoys digging up my garden, and Jeffrey and I have an agreement field. I yell at him to get out of my garden. He gets out of my garden, but then he enjoys coming back into the garden again at dawn, and I can hear him scratching around. So I will usually be, Jeffrey, please get out of the garden. And then he'll go. It's hilarious. He has his bush turkeys. They build a huge pile of fallen leaves and leaf litter and small branches. They build it into a big hill, and the male is the one that makes the nest. And then the female bush turkey will lay her eggs inside the hill, and as the vegetation rots down, it keeps the eggs warm. So Jeffrey's job every day is to rebuild the hill. So you can hear him scratching in the garden every day.
Around.
Yeah, you can hear him, like, literally, it sounds like somebody's raking dry leaves. It's hilarious. And he knows that he's not really allowed in certain parts of the garden. He's kind of like a cheeky 3-year-old little boy. He's like, I know I'm not meant to be in here, but I'm going to test the boundaries anyway. It's a hilarious relationship. I have a lot of fun with it. So I have a lot of wildlife around me, and it makes me happy. It's actually really important to me. I could never live in a city environment again. It's just not something I'm willing to compromise on anymore. For me to be in good shape, for me to be happy and well, I have to be connected to nature every day.
Do you have any recordings of the birds? Or could James send you one that we could share with the listeners?
Sure.
It'd be so nice to hear all the different sounds.
Yeah. Every now and then I record on my Instagram page. I have to admit, I am shocking at social media. I'm just like the worst person at the whole thing of social media.
I
miss the download somehow. So every now and then in my stories I'll do Beehive, or I'll record a storm, or I'll record birdsong, but I will make sure that I record the butcherbirds and the magpies and the kookaburras because they're my favourites.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
They're beautiful. It's such a privilege to live where I do, to be so close to the wildlife and to have that part of my everyday life. I feel really, really like deeply grateful and blessed for that.
Tell me more about the Beehive.
Oh, I love my bees. I love being a bee steward. I have a top bar Kenyan hive. So it's very different from the Langstroth hive. It allows the bees to build their comb naturally in their way without any structural imposition on them. So you have bars that fit into the top of the hive and they're basically empty. And so whenever the bees need to create more honeycomb, they decide how to create and construct that next level of comb. And the queen is able to move with real grace through the whole hive, and it's structured so that it is the closest replication to the way that bees would naturally build a hive inside a hollow log. So it's very hands-off. I'm a very hands-off beekeeper. I don't even call myself a beekeeper. We're in a co-creative partnership with my bees, and it has an observation window so I can see them. And I sit out every day, just hang out with them for half an hour, and we have chats, and then I just watch what needs to happen. We're about to go into the Australian spring, so at the beginning of winter I pulled out quite a lot of the bars because the hive contracts in winter, and in spring it will grow exponentially. Like I can be I'm very conservative with my honey harvesting. For me, that's not the reason to have a beehive. That's the gift of having a beehive. That's the pleasure that I have as a secondary. The relationship that I have with the bees and the way that I partner with them in co-creative gardening, that's the purpose of having the bees, and also to be a stand for bee conservation, bee protection, and to have that educational platform of nurturing bees and being fierce protectors of bees in the world. But in spring, I could easily harvest between 8 to 10 kilos every 4 or 5 weeks.
Wow.
So the bees produce a huge amount of honey. And where I live in Queensland, we really have a very mild winter. So the bees don't really ever stop producing honey. There's always something flowering throughout winter. I have white gums flowering for the whole winter. And so they never really have a shortage of flowers to forage from. It's not like in the Northern Hemisphere, particularly in snowy climates, where you will literally have nature really shuts down and sleeps for the entire winter and the leaves drop and, you know, there's nothing for them to eat. So if you're a bee custodian in that kind of climate, it's essential that you leave enough honey stock in your hive for your bees to overwinter, because if they run out of food in their hive, they'll die and you'll lose your hive. We're blessed in Australia that we don't yet have varroa, and so we're doing very strict quarantine around that to try and prevent that from coming into the country.
So when you see a bee coming your way, what do you feel? What
Delighted,
do you do?
happy. Yeah. I have Italian honeybees that are 4th or 5th generation from a biodynamic beekeeper. My bees are really chill, really gentle, and I do my very best. I'm really a novice beekeeper, but I do my very best to be really deeply respectful and honouring of their space. And I treat them in the same way that I would any wild animal. They're not a commodity, they're not a toy, they're not a pet. They're something of the wildness of nature, and it's my privilege to be able to interact with them. And so I really work at grounding myself and centering myself and being in a really clear, grounded, relaxed, open-hearted space when I work with them. And I do my very best to stay intuitive to their sound, to their behaviour, so that if they tell me we've had enough now, can you leave, I'm out of there. I don't have any fear about being stung. I've been stung a few times, but I love bees so much. I feel so gifted to be able to interact with them. They're not a scary thing for me, but I think in Australia, you grow up with bugs, you grow up with spiders, and if you live anywhere in the bush, you've got snakes. I think as children, we're raised with a certain level of consciousness about insects and wildlife, and so I wasn't raised with fear about that. It's just, you know, a normal everyday part of life. Oh, there's a spider. Okay, we're just going to move it outside. It's not a traumatic event. And so I think I have that naturally relaxed relationship with the insect kingdom and with the reptile kingdom. Like, I'm very respectful of the snakes. So I have snakes in the bush, and some of them are really extremely poisonous. So it would not be fabulous if I got bitten by a snake. But, you know, if I'm walking through our bush, I make a lot of noise and I stamp on the earth, because that tells them that I'm there and they will move, you know.
Yeah, I always find that interesting when people are feeling frantic when bees come around, and I always feel like it's a blessing, and if you just get still, it's almost like they're blessing you.
They totally are. My bees will come and land on my hands and they'll drink my sweat, and they're feeling me, they're sensing me. You know, there are some beautiful stories from Russia and Siberia about bee custodians who deliberately have their bees have access to their saliva or their sweat, and the bees will then make honey that is a direct match for what that person needs.
Yeah.
Like, that's taking bee medicine to a whole other level.
Mm-hmm.
We're starting to get in the realm of shamanism then.
Mm-hmm.
And in that really deep, like I'm excited about the future of beekeeping and bee shamanism. I'm going to travel to the UK next year to do the first level of Celtic bee shamanism. I'm super excited.
Ooh.
Yeah.
We should do another podcast then.
Okay.
You can tell us more. I'm curious what you do with the honey. Do you have any favorite recipes or favorite herbal syrups or any kind of yummy honey delight?
I make honey menstruum for all of my own flower essence remedies. So I have sets of flower essences that I use in my clinic. So I make my own menstruum, which is the dilution substance that you use to put your dosage, your stock flower essences into. I am a novice mead maker. So I've made 3 batches of mead so far. I've got 1 fermenting at home while I'm away. I'm just beginning the process of infusing them with herbs. When I get home, I'll be harvesting comfrey. So I'm about to do a comfrey mead infusion and just experiment with that. So over the next couple of years, I'll be just layering in as many herbs as I can possibly grow and using mead as the solvent and the extraction substance for the herbal medicine. So I'm very witchy and like that. I'm a potion maker. I love, that's like the merging of medicine and food as medicine and cooking and fermentation. I keep all of my beeswax. Obviously, beeswax is such a precious substance and it requires so much work for the bees to make it. So I'm very present when I harvest honey to conserve every tiny little skerrick of beeswax, and I use it in creams, and I deliberately choose to buy only beeswax candles. That's one of my environmental activism points. I buy beautiful beeswax candles from Northern Lights in Byron Bay. They're one of the oldest beeswax candle making companies, I think, in the world. And my bees don't create anywhere near enough wax for me to ever be able to do candles of my own, but I do use my wax in ointments and creams. And then I eat honey most days of the week as a medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally, if I'm feeling particularly luscious, I'll cook with it. But really, I think having had bees and seeing the enormous amount of service and work and energy and life force that goes into honey, I'm not cavalier with honey anymore. I probably would have used honey a lot more abundantly before I became a beekeeper. And now I'm very present to what has gone into the gift of every teaspoon of honey. So for me, honey's now a sacrament. It's something that I consider to be a really holy substance. And so I might make honey cakes at, really important spiritual occasions or for a birthday, but I'm not willy-nilly with honey everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I treat it as a medicine. Pollen, same deal. Treat that as a medicine. And yeah, so that's how I relate to honey now. It's a really precious substance to me.
Mm-hmm. And how do you work? So you work with flower essences, essential oils, naturopathics. Tell me, like, if I were your client, how do you work with your clients? Are you one-on-one? Are you in groups? Where do you start? Where does the conversation start?
I do a little bit of all of that. I have classes. I teach women reproductive sovereignty, empowerment, well-being, preventative health. I'm passionate about women being empowered in all of their reproductive choices, right from the time that they begin their bleed until the time that they stop their bleeding. If you're my client, we usually have what I call a go-look-see. I want to make sure that you're a good fit for me. I need to know that I'm a good fit for you. I'm not the right practitioner for everybody, and I'm really clear about that. And I'm also clear that there are certain people that are not a great fit for me as a client. And I'm super clear about that too. So I like to have a lot of clarity and transparency in the way that I work with people. So we usually do a go look see appointment. You get to decide whether or not I'm a good fit, and I get to decide if you're a good fit. And if I don't feel like you're a good fit, I refer you on to somebody that I feel has the experience and the expertise and the modality that you actually need, because I feel like it's so important that people are cared for by the right person. And I'm very clear, if I'm not the right person, I'm not going to take you on as my client, because that's a disservice to you. So if we're a great fit, then I do need solicitation. Why are you here? How can I support you? How can I be of most service? What do you resonate with? These are your choices. You have the choice of flower essences. This is how they work. You have the choice of aromatic medicine. This is how they work. You have the choice of herbal medicine, nutritional medicine, food as medicine, attitudinal healing, all of the things that are in my naturopathic toolbox. And my clients decide for themselves what they want to access. It's a lot of what I call permission field. So you dictate to me how I work with you, not the other way around. So you give me permission to work with you at whatever level you're most comfortable with. So you may come to me as a client working in fertility, and you may set a boundary that you're just interested in the physical reality of reproductive health. So I respect that boundary, and I'm not going to push you or take you where you don't want to go. But I will always plant seeds and open doors for you, so that you get to decide whether or not you water the seed that I plant for you, or whether you open the door that I've left ajar for you and explore that space. And then in your next consult, I'll chat with you about that, and I assess, so what did you water? What did you nurture? Where did you explore? And then I'll, as a result of that conversation, then I'm like, okay, so that's interesting. So let's give you a seed here in this domain, so that it's so important to me. I'm so passionate about women being empowered, so that you are firmly in the driver's seat of your healthcare. I am your support person, your coach, your cheer squad, your path cutter. I'm not the driver of your healthcare. You have to be that for yourself. That's the only way you recover power in your health. And particularly because I work in the realm of emotions and the heart, in the realm of reproductive medicine, they are the places where as women we lose the most power. So for me to support women to come all the way home to themselves, in their body, in their pelvis, in their heart space, and feel empowered, wise, gracious, competent, confident in that space, that makes me really happy. Mm-hmm. It's a place of joy when somebody comes back and they understand their cervical mucus in a new way, or they understand their bleeding cycle in a new way, and they've come out of feeling quite victimized and disempowered and at a loss. And a couple of months later, they're like, oh, I noticed this month. I'm like, yes, yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. See? That's you've got that distinction. So now from this point forward, you're always going to know that that particular thing means this, and you get to be self-caring and self-modulating. You don't need external help. You then can be at choice and be at power when you negotiate through and access the services of your healthcare providers.
Do you ever take your clients out into your garden?
They walk through my garden to get into my clinic. So they're in my space. I'm really lucky. I work from home. I converted the basement space of our home into my clinic, and I've built a garden outside of that. So we look out onto the bush and onto the garden. So they get a dose of nature before they even step into the clinic.
I've heard, so I've never been in Australia.
Yeah.
Hopefully one day I'll be there and come and visit you.
I'd love that.
But I've always heard that Australia is so different from the US in terms of open-mindedness toward the world of flower essences, and have often heard that almost every pharmacy in Australia has some sort of flower essences. Is that true?
Yeah.
It is true.
I think there is a pioneering spirit in Australia that is the foundation of culture there. And as a result of that pioneering spirit, there's also a level of rebellion and a level of unwillingness to conform to the status quo. And I think that at a cultural level created a psychological, social climate in which natural medicines were able to flourish in a way that perhaps was not available to other countries. We had some really incredible pioneers in our country who created herbal medicine companies like Kerry Bone, who created MediHerb. We have some amazing flower essences pioneers, Ian White, Kadambi and Vasu from the Living Essences. There are a lot of really amazing, innovative leaders. Francesca Naish, who's one of my most cherished mentors, she was really instrumental in creating the whole modality of natural fertility management. She was the first person globally to articulate that work and to identify lunar fertility and symptothermal charting. There were other authors that did that, but she was really the first person. And so everybody kind of followed her lead. And I was very, very blessed that I learned from her. I was one of her clients. You know, I sought her care when I was nursing and when I was working as, studying as a naturopath. So, and then I studied with her. So we've been very lucky to have a groundswell of pioneering naturopathic practitioners, flower essences manufacturers, nutritional medicine specialists, people like Judith White, who created essential oils. She brought aromatherapy to Australia. So somehow I was just in the right place at the right time, at the right age to be able to take full advantage of all of this. Mm-hmm. And so we do have, our pharmacies have embraced natural medicines. I have to say that it's because they're worth money rather than that the pharmacy industry.
Well, clearly a demand.
They're in demand. But yes, you can buy bark flower essences and most of the Ian White Australian bushflower essences, I would say at every pharmacy. Wow. Every pharmacy will have supplements, nutritional medicines. Some of them will be retail, what we call over-the-counter, so you don't need a prescription from the naturopath. Some of them will be practitioner-only products in which you have to consult with a naturopath and bring a script with you. But there's this openness. Naturopathic medicine is really well accepted. We're still in a process of creating integration between the orthodox medical community and naturopathic practitioners and alternative medicine practitioners and the pharmaceutical industry and the naturopathic community. That's a work in progress. And I'm not going to get political about that.
As is everywhere. As is everywhere. It's funny you mentioned Judith White.
Yeah.
The first and only time I met Judith White was in 2005. And it's almost like a surreal dream. It was like I plunked down into some other planet. There were 12 of us, I think, from many different countries. And we were having dinner with one of the princesses of Thailand. And so all of us had to have specially tailored raw silk clothing made so that we could be presentable. And
wow,
I remember my business was at the point that was like the labels on the bottles were so pathetic, like home printed. I'm sure the princess was just like, I don't know what to do with this. What is this?
Amazing. What a cool story.
I had been, working with clients for 10 years.
Yeah.
But I still wasn't clear on packaging and I knew that I wanted to bring it to the world, but I couldn't figure out how I was going to do that. And so I met Judith at this random, extravagant dinner in Bangkok with, princes from other, like a prince from Brunei and from, people from all over it was almost like a few people from each continent were there representing, and everyone had this really pure wish and intention to benefit the planet. And that was it.
That is divine synchronicity, if ever I have heard it.
It's bizarre, right?
That's
small
amazing.
World.
Small world. Yeah, she's an amazing woman. So, she was one of the very first pioneers of aromatherapy and aromatic medicine in Australia. She created this absolutely immaculate, beautiful range of essential oils, and they were the first range that I had access to.
Wow.
So they're beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, she's an amazing woman.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. What a beautiful, I love how as women we have these incredibly rich life stories, and there's just like the 7 degrees of separation thing is such a thing, that we're so interconnected. I love that about us. It's amazing to me.
Who's one person that you would love to be connected with, or that you're connected with, but you haven't met them yet?
Oh, that's an amazing question. I would have to think on that deeply, I think. My brain has fried. I can't even think.
It's a tough one.
It is a tough one. If I could travel through time, I would love to go back to France at the height of the apothecary era, at the height of the botanical perfume making era.
You kind of just did that last week.
I feel like it would be somewhere in Europe. It would be someone or somewhere in Europe, somebody that had a really deep, rich, like multi-generational background in healing that was embodied that through their lineage. That would excite me. But I can't think of anyone off the top of my head. I think also to be able to sit at the feet of Indigenous elders from whatever culture or creed or nation, I think there's something immensely powerful and sacred about sitting with the elderly, being present with them, listening to their stories, just allowing their wisdom. I think we are at a place in our history where youth is being so deified and so glorified that we are forgetting about the deep wisdom that comes with age. And so to be able to sit with an elderly herbalist or an elderly aromatherapist, or there's just something that happens as a practitioner, as a clinician, as a healer. For me, you really start hitting your stride at about the 25-year mark. And I still consider that after 30 years, I really know not a lot. I'm still constantly humbled by my lack of knowledge. And yet, if I'm being real, I have a lot of wisdom and I have a lot of knowledge. But
well, there's 40,000 different plants, and each of them has their
there's their signature and
range of.
So it's a lifetime, and historically women would spend their entire lives.
Lifetimes.
I'm present to past lives as a druid. I would have spent 30 years, 40 years, 50 years before I was even allowed to create a formulation or care for people. We've lost that deep lineage of work, and we expect everything to be instant gratification now. We're supposed to be perfect, right, and done within the first year. And there's something very powerful that comes with time, and that comes with a depth of experience and a range of experience.
Right. It's not like a weekend course.
It's not like Monday a Wheaties box course, no, it's not like that. Right. So, yeah.
The more you know, the more you realize there's so much more to know.
Absolutely.
I mean, I look at just coming back from Asia, and I look at Chinese medicine, which I haven't studied at all. That's not at all in my wheelhouse, even though I have such a tremendous depth of appreciation and love for it. And I think, my God, the amount of herbs and formulations and formulas and different conditions and pulse taking and tongue
diagnosis and face reading. And
you could study for lifetimes and still not, I mean, generations of families and still improve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fascinating.
And I think there used to be an expectation that a lifetime of deep work, of dedicated, kind of tenacious, committed, devotional work to the healing arts was just the tip of the iceberg. And there was an expectation of, there was the expectation that came with that it was a sacred art, that it wasn't a commodity. It was deeply grounded in service to humanity, service to the planet, and experience. And it was a spiritual purpose. It was a spiritually devotional practice, in the same way that monks have a spiritual practice, priests, nuns, the spiritual arts are a different field.
So I imagine that, like myself, your business is your spiritual practice, or part of your spiritual practice.
Yeah, it's a foundation. It's the way that I express my gifts and talents and abilities for the purpose of spiritual fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
It's my purpose. It's the reason I incarnated.
And then specifically relating to flower essences, because I know we have a lot of flower essence fans, what are some of your favorite experiences or results with clients with flower essences, or maybe personal experience with flower essences? Or even for the listener who's maybe listening but still skeptical of flower essences, like, what are some of your favorite wowza?
I think for me, flower essences are such a magic alchemy of plant medicine, because they are so gentle, so elegant, so pure, and so fundamentally nourishing and nurturing in the deepest possible way. And yet they are so powerfully transformative. I've never seen flower essences tip somebody into a painfully cathartic process. They are like the most delicious, warm, nurturing, maternal enfoldment of, I've got you. It's okay. You're going to be just fine. Everything that you're feeling is okay. You can do this. I have you. We have you. And you are just going to access all of your own innate strength and courage and wisdom. And I am going to support you to have that arise into your conscious awareness, so that you can then bring that forward. And for me, that's the gift of flower essences. This magic alchemy that's gifted to us by the floral world, of this pure light, this pure heart presence. And I've seen, I've worked with, fertility is a very interesting place to work. There's a lot of emotional distress. There's a lot of spiritual distress. There's a lot of adult life crisis. There's a lot of lives that feel all of a sudden utterly derailed, with dreams that get smashed into oblivion at a diagnosis of infertility. It can be deeply painful for couples and for women and men to receive a fertility diagnosis. It has very strong parallels to a cancer diagnosis or a diagnosis of autoimmunity that's serious. So it has the same kind of energetic imprint of a life crisis. It will flip your life around in ways that you didn't expect. So working with couples who are on a fertility journey, they need spiritual support, they need emotional support, they need attitudinal support to stay empowered, to not drop into victim consciousness and be in a state of trauma and distress. IVF programs are rigorous. They push the body to the limit. It's a big process. And so for me, flower essences provide this really deep level of comfort, of being able to work with what's happening present time, current reality today. How am I feeling today? To have a set of aromatic roller blends that can shift your mood, that can elevate your mood, that can calm anxiety and distress, that can calm grief, and flower essences that you can take that can support you. You know, one of the reasons that I love your mist is because they combine flower essences and aromatherapy in one modality. It's like, I can't tell you how happy I am about that particular one point. To be able to mist yourself with flower essences and aromatherapies, to breathe in that beautiful fragrance and receive the vibrational support of the flower essences. Like, they're literally game changers. They change people from the inside out. And they just give you greater capacity to walk through life and to face crisis in whatever shape or form that is. And I think at another level, they also give you opportunity paths to evolve, to expand, to grow, to change, to shift into the best of who you are, to access what makes you unique as a human, what makes you the most sparkly, shiny, heart open, radiant, healthy, vibrant, well person that you can possibly be, with all of your magic intact, able to express that in the world. They give you these beautiful opportunity paths of adventure and exploration and knowingness about that, you know. So to be able to offer that as a gift to people, I can't, it makes me cry. I love it. It's so special to be able to do this work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to be able to see somebody light up and to recover their inner light when they've been in the depths of despair. Like, that's magical to me, to be able to offer that, to be able to support somebody to feel hopeful and optimistic, to recover their dreams, to feel on track, on purpose, to make a transition out of a shitty career that they friggin' hate into something that they love, to have a mother be able to recover her sense of poise and calm amidst the mundane chaos of mothering two little people under the age of 5. You know, to have couples recover their heart space and their passion and their joy for each other. Like, flower essences are just like magical. They do everything. You know, you can apply them to every single area of life: physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, financial, work, professional, career, creativity, artistry, personal life, your intimate relational life with your children or with your partner, friendship. Like, that they address every little nuance and colour and flavour of our humanity, and they just make it better. I love them.
Thank you so much for listening to The Flower Lounge. I'm Katie Hess, and we'll be releasing a new podcast every Wednesday. If you like what you heard, or you know someone who might be touched by our conversation, share it with them. And don't forget to subscribe. To find out what your favorite flowers mean about you, take the quiz at LOTUSWEI.com.